Welcome to Co-Opinions. I'm your host, Josh, and today I have Brent with me.
Hey.
So let's go ahead and get right into it. Brent, what did you spend this last week playing?
I knocked out Limbo weekend or so ago, and I started up Homeworld 2 HD, so that's what I'm knocking out now.
Did you play the original Homeworld 2?
Nope, just mods of Homeworld 2.
Did you play the original Homeworld?
The original one, I played half of it before I played the HD one.
So how's 2 stacking up to the original?
Harder?
Yeah.
It's not, HD-wise it looks nice, but it's still a hard game.
Still beating you?
Yes.
And you were wanting to wrap these up fairly quickly, weren't you?
Hoping to, but I'm not confident in that.
Alright. Well, best of luck to you. I picked up The Old Hunters just today. I'm hoping to sink some significant time into that this weekend. Also hoping to get some more Xenoblade Chronicles X time in. I've really been wanting to play it, but it's got a crazy slow start. I've put an hour and a half into it right now, and I'm still next to nowhere in the game. But that's what to expect. And the big thing I spent time on was I got through the entirety of the Vita game Tearaway, which ended up being the best Vita game I've played, which is an interesting distinction that I'll get back to when we get to my segment. Let's go ahead and move into what you wanted to discuss this week, which was the future of Star Wars games.
Yep, I figured it is the May the 4th week, so I'd like to discuss some Star Wars. I know you couldn't give a less. With May the 4th, we got the announcement of a developer. She was put onto a new game at the studio that makes Titanfall, which I have suddenly forgotten the name of, and they are making a new Star Wars game. So people are really hoping that's a pretty good thing. But way back in November, when Star Wars Battlefront was released, there was an off-the-cuff remark by someone at EA who said that all of their subsidiaries and smaller companies were all developing Star Wars games. So that's BioWare, the people who made the KOTOR games and the Old Republic. They're working on a Star Wars game, which I'll get into that in a second. And just about everyone, DICE, who makes Battlefield, made Battlefront. But I'm hoping this is a good sign. LucasArts had some pretty rough years there at the end. I know we've discussed my not so great disdain for the Force Unleashed games.
Well, I know that I among other people tried to warn you about the Force Unleashed games. Did you even bother with the second one? No. I know you did the first one.
No, the first one killed me. Just I wasn't into the story, the gameplay. I couldn't keep going. Had some nice parts to it, but not enough. But I know when EA got the licensing from Disney for this, I was a little concerned. EA's always been hit or miss on stuff that they do. But my understanding was if it wasn't for DICE pushing to do Battlefront, things may not have gone this well, since they canned another Star Wars game right out the gate after its first test showing.
And what was that they canned? Was that 1313?
No, that was canned when LucasArts was put on suspension. When Lucasfilms was bought up by Disney, all the games LucasArts was working on were null and void or terminated. So people are actually kind of hoping that these games are actually getting picked up by the companies at EA and that they're going to be finally released to the public. But no, it was a X-Wing, so a fighter sim game in line with the old Star Wars X-Wing and TIE Fighter game that people wanted so much a sequel to. Yeah, they canned it. It never saw the light of day. But back to Battlefront, I liked it, but I felt like the first mistake they made was they called it Battlefront. They tried to invoke nostalgia for people who loved Battlefront 1 and 2, who'd been clamoring for years to get a Battlefront 3, which had been in development and then canned. I myself am included there. The problem was that the game they gave us wasn't Battlefront. It was a nifty first-person shooter Star Wars game, but they put the wrong title to it, and I think that rubs some people the wrong way.
So what made it not Battlefront?
Well, I mean, you can argue, but I guess you go into any game like that and say, it wasn't third person and the other one was first person, but it had staples that you expect from a dice game. It had a lot of staples that Battlefield games have, like different classes, your medic, your regular soldier, your tech, all those things, different types of guns, all the things you expect when you play a Battlefield game. And those are the things I expected picking up Battlefront that I was going to see, and they weren't there. You had skins that you could change what your characters looked like, and yeah, you have multiple different guns, so you've got that, but you don't have classes. You get into vehicles by finding tokens on the battlefield. Same thing with the heroes. It's not the same.
So what were your thoughts on, I don't remember how significant of a controversy it was, but the DLC rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Were you in that?
Are you talking about just the stuff that's going to be in the DLCs or the amount of pricing for the DLC?
The pricing, I think, was the big thing that got people.
When the DLC came out, my first thought on that was when it was right on the heels of the complaining people had about the Arkham Knight DLC, where it's like $40 for 6 months season pass, and it felt like EA said, I see your Warner Brothers $40 and I up you 50. And that's what it really felt like. I mean, I hear it has significant content. I've not purchased it yet. And the free stuff has been pretty great. I do like the free DLC content, so...
What kind of free DLC content has it had? I know other games have done free DLC in the form of usually map packs.
Yeah, they released several different versions of maps. They released nighttime maps. They're still set up differently. They're not like they went over and went, here's the same level at night. No, it's a totally different part of the area. And they released more guns. They released this thing called the bounty hunting rewards, where you take jobs from Jabba the Hutt, and it's basically like going for specific achievements. You purchase the achievement, and then when you beat it, you get special rewards, weapons, stuff like that. It's interesting. For a free thing, it's pretty great, but I wanted more. I still liked it. I still enjoy it, but it wasn't Battlefront. I feel they should have called it something different. I'm having high hopes that the future of Star Wars games looks good, because BioWare made two of my favorite Star Wars games.
And those were the Knights of the Old Republic?
Yeah. I've not played the Old Republic, but I've heard good things, other than at its start. But I almost feel like every MMO has a rough start. So, yeah, I'm hoping for some decent things.
Are you hoping for another RPG type game? Are you hoping for a shooter? Are you hoping for a space?
So on that one, so the one being made by the people who made Titanfall was the woman who got set to project manager. There we go. She said it was a third-person adventure game. So they're like, with Titanfall, you get into giant mechs. Am I going to be able to get into a chicken walker and run around in that? Because that would be neat. And I get where they're going. It'll be interesting to see that one. I really hope that if they've said BioWare is working on a Star Wars game, and they had a Star Wars KOTOR 3 in the works years ago. So I really hope that it's coming. Really do.
Well, let's say, were you a big fan of, I think, Rogue Squadron it was called? So how would you feel if they announced another one of those games?
That would make me happy. I expect more of the X-Wing thing, because that was bigger for PC than... Rogue Squadron was still really popular. Rogue Squadron was interesting because all the Rogue Squadron games were console exclusives for Nintendo. So... that was a big time when they did some pretty big exclusives just for Nintendo. Some of them did get ported to PC, so I like it. I'm not going to bank on it, though. So we'll see. I'm really hoping that at E3, EA gives us something, announces some Star Wars games.
Was Battlefront just announced last year? Or was that 2 years ago?
2 years. 2 years ago. Had to be 2 years ago.
All right. Well, hopefully with those Star Wars, with Episode 7 having come out late last year.
Yeah, and EA's contract for the licensing is for like the next decade. So that's through the next 6 films at least. So,
well, hopefully, are you hoping for any kind of a direct tie-in, like a Rogue One tie-in, or?
Like a lot of people I've heard, I expect the last DLC for Battlefront that we haven't heard 1 inch of what's going to be in it that comes out in January of 2017. I expect it to be a Rogue One tie-in. There was something and the EA president said when they were discussing it, and he said don't expect a lot of tie-in games because, like with all the older Star Wars games, there's so much more you can do by not going back to that old here's the movie as a video game all over again. Instead, it's way easier for them to make games in the universe that aren't set around those main characters. So,
all right, well, I hope you hear something about it at E3, and hopefully all this new Star Wars enthusiasm does something to improve that. Moving on to my discussion topic, I said that I'd beaten Tearaway in the last week, and something that really jumped out at me, and this was noted in the initial reviews, this game came out in 2013, I'm not playing a new game, was that it was the best utilization of the Vita hardware they had ever seen. And I thought that was interesting because something you hear in a lot of games, Vita games, 3DS games, Wii games, and sometimes even as far as Wii U games, or Kinect games, Move games, these are things that are considered gimmicks. But what can really, really differentiate is when somebody finds a way to effectively utilize this functionality and change a gimmick into innovation. Now, if we're going to do a comparison, Tearaway successfully used the front touchscreen, the rear touchscreen, the gyroscopic controls, the front camera, and the back camera. And these were all done in a way that didn't feel unnecessarily obtrusive into the game. So for Tearaway, very early in the game, you are running along and there is a pattern on the ground and it goes, what in the world is that? Try touching the back touchpad. And when you touch it, fingers come up through the floor. So you can actually track where you're touching because your fingers will move along and destroy these enemies. So one of the biggest complaints people had about the back touchpad with the Vita is, how the hell am I ever going to use this? You can't see where you're touching. So there's no fidelity there, you just know if you're on the left half or the right half. I'm sure you've played some Vita games, so you can attest to this.
yeah, I played the Resistance game, which it was a fun game, and I liked the story, but man, their utilization of the front and back touchscreen was just terrible. I could have done without it a whole lot, but then I played the Killzone one, and they didn't utilize it a lot, which made it a lot easier to play, but what little they did use wasn't bad. I wouldn't say, oh man, this is the best utilization of the front and back touchscreen, but I'd put it middle of the road.
And that's one of the things about it, was last summer I played Uncharted Golden Abyss, which was supposed to be the killer app for the Vita when it came out. As is the case when most of these games come out for the new system, they try to use all the functionality to prove how useful and innovative it can be. And having played it years after it came out, it did none of those things. The touchpad, they go, you can use this to climb around. Or, if that's clunky and unintuitive, just do it like you've always done it. You can use the back touchpad to throw grenades, I think. Or if this is stupid, do it the normal way. So it felt tacked on. It didn't feel necessary. It didn't feel like it flowed. So it had to contribute to the negative reviews it got. Not only because the story was almost entirely forgettable and the gameplay was nothing special, but what could have been an interesting incorporation of a ton of different elements was not just underutilized, it was poorly utilized. Compare it with Tearaway, which, having just beaten it an hour before we started recording this, the ending was actually really heartwarming because of the way they incorporate the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and say a spoiler alert for a 3-year-old game here. And what it does is over the course of the game, this character is trying to get to you, the player. And they actually refer to him as you. And your face is sticking out of the sun. And it does that by using the forward-facing camera and imposing you in the sun.
I was curious why I heard the flash.
Oh yeah, well that was because I was taking pictures with my in-game camera, which can use the front facing and back-facing camera. Anyways, when you get to the very end, it uses clever perspective. They go through the sun, and it makes it look like they're peering down into the Vita, and using clever camera angles, it shows them looking in, and your face is behind them like you're observing them looking down into the Vita. It's really clever. It was actually a really cute, well-executed game. And it has recently been re-released on the PS4 as Tearaway Unfolded. And I heard that that version didn't quite capture the same warmth, so that's why I chose to do it. But going to other examples of systems with underutilized functionality, let's go to the easiest comparison, the 3DS. Have you ever played a 3DS game with gyroscopic controls?
No.
They are garbage. I can't speak for all of them, but I know there are some games, like near the end of Mario and Luigi Dream Team, you have to use the gyroscopic controls to basically play a version of Pong. It sucks. It's awful, because it's a boss battle.
That sounds terrible.
It was terrible. I know one of the early 3DS games, Star Fox 3D, Star Fox 64 3D, had gyroscopic controls. They knew people probably wouldn't want to use them, so they disabled them.
Really curious on that one, if that was testing for stuff for Star Fox Zero.
Yeah, they only beat him to the punch by, 5 years? Yeah, something like that. But one place they are somewhat useful is when you're using in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D. When you go into first-person view, it's actually not terrible to look around using the gyroscopic controls at that point. But how many games, and I ask this honestly, how many games have you played on the 3DS where you've used the 3D functionality?
Oh, I hate 3D, so none.
Right.
If I can avoid it.
And for the most part, prior to the new 3DS, it was kind of like playing games on the old Game Boy. You had to have the perfect angle and keep it at the perfect angle to be able to see it. So it was very rarely something I turned on because it didn't usually add anything to it, and it was a huge pain. Link Between Worlds masterfully used the field of depth in a way that wasn't just obnoxious, it actually added some to the gameplay, but didn't make it impossible to access. So that was a good use. How many games use the camera or the microphone? Next to none. Just doesn't happen. But when you do see it work well, it's really impressive. So another example of it felt like they missed the mark, the Wii. Pretty much the Wii, period. Because I have a ton of Wii games. I do, and I enjoy them. But the first thing, when you saw the Wii, what did you think of using that Wii remote to do?
I mean, when I first had it, I thought it was going to be a thing. But once I realized that, like, for, like, the baseball game and stuff, if you could just flick your wrist, you didn't have to swing through it. Like, you were really playing baseball or, you know, doing the sword in Zelda wasn't nearly that hard once you realized it didn't require the actual movements.
And that was the thing about it. The actual gyroscopic controls required itty-bitty motions. So it really wasn't what you needed. And the other thing people thought would be awesome was using it in shooting games. But the problem with that was because they always attached the camera directly to the reticle, you always had to hold it up, which meant you were either bouncing it on your leg and kind of shooting from the hip, or your arm got super tired. It was a good idea with poor follow-through.
A rail shooter wasn't bad. An actual FPS, what was that one that was a launch title?
Red Steel.
God, that had some problems.
Yeah, that game was pretty widely lauded as you tried. So there were some good examples, there were some bad examples. If we want to go with one that was almost universally reviled, I'm going to say any game that used a Kinect or PlayStation Move, because it touched upon the fact that they had the motion sensing capabilities down pretty strong, but They had no way to control movement. Any game that was a game almost had to be a rail shooter.
Yeah.
And those got mixed reviews at best. I think now officially the last Fable game, and I could be wrong, would be Fable The Journey, I think it was. It was a Kinect-only game where you were supposed to use motions to cast spells. It got blasted in reviews. And now that Lionhead Studios has shut down, that is their legacy. So, yeah, unpleasant. But what I'm getting to here is I wish more games would try to use the functionality. Before the Wii U came out, I thought of all the interesting ways that the gamepad could be used. In games like Rayman Legends, they used it amazingly. Games like Zelda Wind Waker, the Wii U version, they used it okay.
Well, they used it in a way that I think for a Zelda game was how I expected, as your map, as your inventory stuff.
But they could have used it for puzzles. They could have. And the fact...
But it didn't help that Wind Waker wasn't a Wii U game.
It wasn't a Wii U game. And on top of that, they're just not using like the motion sensing. We still don't have a Pokemon Snap U, which it doesn't look like we're going to have for what we're going to get into with the next topic. But I just wish more people would try to use the functionality they build in, and the failure to use that functionality, I think, is what's causing a lot of the problems. If the Vita hadn't put so much in, maybe the production costs wouldn't have been so high and they wouldn't have hurt so bad, because God knows I don't think we're ever going to see another PlayStation handheld.
I think PlayStation handhelds are gone.
Yeah, so 2 iterations. They had a decent run. So, moving on to our final topic, our big topic of the evening, there has been a lot of talk about Nintendo. And I know Brent has a lot to say about it, and as an individual who has played Nintendo games since he was approximately 2 years old, I have quite a lot to say myself. So Brent, go ahead, get the ball rolling.
All right, let's see here. So in the past week, man, we've had a lot of Nintendo news, haven't we? Past 3 weeks. What with them, people got super worried right out of the gate with all their announcements about the NX coming out in March, and Zelda's pushed back and no longer just a Wii U title. It's not coming out at Christmas.
I told you that was going to happen. I told you.
And then people are super concerned because they're selling the Seattle Mariners, and...
Yeah, but, I mean, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, people were talking doom and gloom on Nintendo, which the Wii U, it has not commercially succeeded. Not even just compared to the Wii, which blew it out of the water. That being said, the Wii sold 100 million units. Mm-hmm. The PS2 sold 120 million units. Now, that can be attributed to the fact that the Wii discontinued production shortly after the Wii U came out. I think if they had kept it around longer in its full capacity, that it would have had a longer shelf life. But I think that the Wii might have been just a really lucky flash in the pan for Nintendo.
I think for the Wii, just in general, it was bad marketing.
The Wii
U was bad marketing. The problem wasn't, I get it, Wiimotes are everywhere. Everyone who had a Wii had a Wiimote. And a lot like people who had GameCube controllers who really enjoyed the fact that, oh look, there are the GameCube controller hookups to the original Wiis. So people want to keep their controllers around. So the problem was they showed that in all the Wii U commercials and people thought it was just another Wii.
And that's the problem. They should have called it the Wii 2. Even though it's a terrible name and I hate it, it at least says it's the next thing. The Wii U never really said that. But we're getting on to things we think they did wrong. So there was the announcement that the NX, still codename NX, was going to be released next year, 2017. March. Did March ever get confirmed?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's set up confirmed that it's sometime in March.
Okay. Another thing that came out that made a lot of people, myself included, worried was the fact the NX will not be playable at E3.
It's a weird move for Nintendo, for anything about not having system play on hand. It's just not showing anything. I mean, if they show something like Tokyo Game Show, maybe. This is weird.
there needs to be a hand-on in some capacity, and there's no way they're not going to. I mean, Smash Brothers got a road show before it came out. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could play it at certain locations at certain times. Did the Wii U have that? I can't remember.
No, I don't remember.
I don't think it did, but I'm not positive. I do remember getting a Wii U was a lot easier than getting a Wii. And that actually led me to buy one way earlier than I should have. Where do you stand? Because I know you are very nervous about the prospect of an all-digital console.
To me, it's a bad move. Most people still have dial-up internet, so...
I love how you're campaigning for the little man. How does it affect you directly?
I prefer hard copies. I myself destroy things just by touching them or being around them. And if Nintendo had a record like Sony and Microsoft with their digital stuff, where if I lost my system, knock on wood, I would get everything back. I lost my Wii. I lost like $50 in virtual console games. Gone, along with all my save data. So having to get a new Wii and then repurchase all of those kind of sucked. So if my PS4 crapped out today, I could get all my stuff back, even the stuff I've gotten for free from PlayStation Plus. It's all on my profile. So that's a plus. And even I still don't trust Microsoft and PlayStation with an all-digital system. So if Nintendo had their track record, I maybe could back it a little easier.
Now, Nintendo has been increasing their online robustness over the course of the Wii U. Now, not a lot of people utilize it because what do we got? We got Smash Brothers and Mario Kart. That's really it, isn't it? That anybody plays online, that I play. Oh, Splatoon. Splatoon's huge.
Splatoon, yeah, that was a big hit for them. So
it's an enormous hit. Enormous to the point where they're having reskinned amiibo come out. Oh, there's a question. So before we finish with this format topic, you saw the whole ROM chip thing. Do you think that they are not going to be all digital?
I don't think they are. I think it's a weird move, but I've heard other people talk about it. So I think the idea that the ROM chip helps alleviate the erroneous installs of...
Well, it reduces the read speed is what it does.
But just having to install every game, and it would be nice. So it could mean that they're not intending on putting a big hard drive in the index. So we'll see. I mean, yeah, I would love to still be able to backwards compatible my discs, but a cartridge isn't bad. I'm still getting a hard copy, so...
Well, and we're assuming that it's not backward compatible. It could very distinctly, if it's got a ROM chip, there could just be a little slot and a disk drive.
True. The arguments I've heard is that the ROM chip supports more the idea that it probably is a console handheld hybrid, which was something that I was reading an argument on, and I watched another internet news site talk about it, that it seems easier for them to go to that hybrid handheld console with the ROM chip with the cartridges than it is with a disc, because it's easier for a controller to be the handheld portion with those than it is for your console. And I kind of understood what they were saying. So I'm less worried after that statement from the ROM company. I think it really probably is this. So
I know I'm concerned because what is the highest capacity? We're just going to go SD card you're aware of.
60 something?
Right. And what is the highest capacity for a Blu-ray disc?
128?
It's significantly bigger. Yeah. So, do you not see a problem?
I can see the problem. I mean, again, people would love for Nintendo to go back having third-party games. And I think that goes to a fact that in the US especially, people are wanting to go to just one console a piece. They don't want to have multiple consoles for some reason. So they want to just stick with one, third-party games. They bought one, done. And a lot of people buy Nintendos for Nintendo games. So, and Nintendo games don't usually span on the size of Metal Gear Solid 5 or, you know, a Final Fantasy game that are all sporting several discs at times. So Metal Gear Solid 4 was the first PlayStation 3 game to use the dual layer function of a Blu-ray.
Like, they almost had to still go two discs, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the news of the ROM chip made me more worried.
It's an interesting thing. Like you said, you don't know it's not backwards compatible. Could they still have a disk drive? Would they do the disk drive still for third party games and all of theirs would now be cartridges?
That seems like a bad move on their part to make them be different formats. I don't think that's a wise move.
It isn't, but they've been doing a lot of things lately that everyone doesn't think are why. Their E3, for instance.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that. What do you think first? You want to talk about the E3 thing, or you want to talk about possibly lost functionality from the Wii U to the NX? Specifically,
let's stick with the functionality.
So the thing you're concerned about, which almost baffles me, is the possibility of losing the NFC functionality, near field communication, because they've leaned real hard on amiibos in these last few years.
They have. The selling point for Twilight Princess HD for the amiibo was the amiibo to be able to carry over to the new Zelda that we don't have a name for. We'll see it at E3. The question is the NX going to have the NFC? Because if not, then the only way it's useful is if I get it on the Wii U.
But you're assuming, and in every other case I've ever thought of with the possibility of the new version being janky, the old version is never the version you want. So if they release it on the Wii U and NX, in almost every case, for every reason, the NX would be the better choice. Because something about the specs are better, something about the functionality is increased. Logically, you want to go with the newest system. However, if the Wii U version and the NX version are identical, because both have NFC, because the only difference is one is on a ROM chip, for example, and the other one is not.
It's an interesting one. Like, I don't know, I was debating something in my head, but then I thought I was wrong about it. If it doesn't have backwards compatibility to discs, what about all your amiibos you have now?
That's why I'm so confused why you're so upset when I have every Smash amiibo, every Mario Party amiibo, all the Splatoon amiibo, even Chibi Robo, which I don't even own that game.
I think I'm more worried just about the Zelda one. And it comes back to, it really goes to the point where it does feel like they've just thrown the Wii U out the door. Like, just kicked it without a Zelda game. And it's just weird because it will be the first Nintendo anything without its own Zelda game. Every handheld, every console has had its own Zelda game.
What did the Game Boy Advance? They had Minish Cap. That's right.
They also had Seasons and Ages.
That was Game Boy Color.
Oh, yeah, it was.
As a dude who loved those games.
Okay. Yeah. I just forget that I got them when I got a Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, well, they actually had more functionality on Game Boy Advance. It was minuscule, but there was things. So let's move on to E3.
All right.
They announced in the last week that they weren't going to have a traditional E3 presence. What they were going to have was they were going to stream a treehouse of the new Zelda game, and that was going to be the only thing that you could play on their show floor. To me, it sounded like that's the only thing they're going to talk about all E3. That's really how it sounded to me. Did you get a different?
Well, at first, I heard and read some different things. I mean, the thing about the treehouse has come out in the past few days here. I mean, most people thought they would still have a Nintendo Direct. I realized that the only thing they're going to have on the floor was Zelda, but someone made a point that at previous E3s, they've had just one thing as their focal point. I think it was either Smash or Mario Kart, where that was all it was. But there were little small, like, kiosk tables featuring stuff from other games. Like, there was X and Y or something. They had a little setup. They didn't have anything playable. I mean, it's weird to think they won't have something. It feels like a weird move with all the stuff that they're doing.
Well, I know something that you were kind of concerned about. One of the reasons that you thought they were going to have a Nintendo Direct was they recently announced Pokemon Sun and Moon, which, given the rampant success of X and Y, would lead you to believe that there's going to be a presence of Sun and Moon at E3. However, just in the last day or two, maybe in today, they said they're going to have an additional information briefing about Sun and Moon within the next month. So, do you think that that's more of a nail in the coffin about Zelda being the only thing there? Because
I do. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if there was a Nintendo Direct before E3. There's still a chance there won't be, but it feels like there might. Nintendo's really wonky. Like last year, they had Nintendo Directs so much. Like they were pushing them out the door just to get them on. Like they had 4 by like June, 3 or 4.
But that was prior to Iwata passing, wasn't it?
It was.
Iwata passing threw a huge wrench in the communication.
I missed the last one. I caught all the news afterwards. So you gotta wonder if Iwata passing has played a major role in this one not to do Nintendo Directs. I mean, they could easily put Reggie or Miyamoto, have them do it, but
the problem with using Reggie, and I think that I've discussed this with somebody else before, he's only the president of Nintendo of America. He can't speak for Nintendo. Just like whenever there's a Nintendo of Europe discussion, Nintendo Direct, they have the Nintendo of Europe guy speak. So Iwata was able to speak for Nintendo. Even Miyamoto can't really speak for Nintendo because he's not the guy running the company. Even if he's designed some of their most successful franchises, he's still not.
And the new guy feels a lot more uptight from all the stuff that I've read. Not as a vibrant person. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Just a face for Nintendo is not what he is. He's very much a business.
Yeah, there really hasn't been a lot directly associated with him. I know that Iwata was a very social individual. He's very outward facing. This new guy, he's not really seemed to be even remotely.
And that's a testament to how much people were sad when Iwata passed.
Ugh,
so
that was a bummer.
It was. And that's what made me worried about the direction of the company, because Iwata was a big player in what direction Nintendo kept going on the innovative, no matter how much people didn't like it.
Was the discussion to start doing mobile games and the like, was that prior to Iwata's passing?
It at least started 2 years ago. I don't think that had anything to do with Iwata passing. I think that had way more to do with the Japanese market in general. Their heavy play on just everyone plays cell phone games, and not like Americans play cell phone games. So they're not playing Candy Crush or anything like that. They're playing...
I know that it is a slightly different approach, so it can be a little confusing. But have you actually had a chance to try Mitomo?
No.
It's a weird thing because it's not really a game. It's more of a question answering app.
Huh.
Like, they played it about as safe as they could possibly play it.
That feels like a segue right there. When we're talking about the NX and all that other stuff, they said, hey, when they set it to shareholders, it's going to play Wii U, 3DS. It'll be compatible with our console, handheld, and our mobile games, which is interesting that they would go there. I mean, handheld for a while now has been their out of the ballpark hit. They've been making the most money off 3DS games and 3DSs for a while.
Even the 3DS compared to the DS has not been the runaway success. It hasn't failed by any stretch of the imagination, but do you remember how bad it struggled when it came out? The 3DS did not do great when it came out. It got a price cut in less than 6 months, to which it rewarded the early adopters with all those free games.
I do remember that now.
Yeah, no, 3DS didn't do great when it started up.
But their handheld has still been their biggest market, so it's tough to say there. I'm worried, like the E3 presentation, my biggest fear is it's not just... I've heard the idea that this is a rebuilding year, this is a restructuring year, that they have very little in the lineup, because we talked about that. What do they have coming out at Christmas? I think the nearest thing is Sun and Moon. Probably. We still don't have release dates on them.
Yeah, I know that I am somewhat... I got a lot of trepidation, because what other Nintendo releases are even coming out this year?
I can't think of any.
Well, I know that there's the Kirby game, but that's coming out in June, and that's coming out for a handheld. I can't think of any Wii U games that are coming out.
And even then, they're not talking about anything else at E3, so you can't say... Well, unless they announce something at E3, because they're not.
It doesn't look like it's going to be a good year for Nintendo in terms of releases. I'll be buying Star Fox Zero which let's go ahead and talk about Star Fox Zero, because I think that can tie in both to what I was saying before about gimmicks, kind of, and the future in Nintendo, because they took a big risk on Star Fox.
They did. It's sad when the one part of Star Fox Zero Miyamoto was so thrilled about was the chicken walker, and it's been pinpointed as one of the lowest parts of the game. They tried to use the functionality of the Wii U gamepad as best as they could, and I hear it takes a little while to get used to. There's that to look forward to. I'm excited. I like Star Fox games, so I've liked most of them. The only one I've never played is Adventure.
And that can only nebulously be described as a Star Fox game.
Which is kind of like the game coming with Star Fox Zero, Star Fox Guard.
Well, that's not a Star Fox game. They rebranded a different game.
Well, they added in stuff into it to make it look Star Fox.
Well, yeah, to make it look Star Fox, but that's exactly what Star Fox Adventure was.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the same thing.
We've discussed this before. I won't be partaking in the Star Fox Guard myself, but I don't like tower defense games. I've heard, and this is kind of egregious for a game I heard was 6 hours long. It's got a ton of replayability because, much like Star Fox 64, I heard there's different routes you can take. So that's not to say there's an infinite amount of replayability, because there was, 15 planets in Star Fox 64?
And
so,
like 4 or 5 definite routes you could take. So
I mean, you could take a bunch of routes.
Well, you can do it differently, but you can only offshoot 2 ways every certain planet. I mean, you get what I'm saying there.
Yeah. I heard it takes 2 hours to get comfortable with those controls. So here's a question, because they said that this was a possibility. Would you play Star Fox Zero with a second player? Would you play with somebody else controlling the R-Wing while you shot, or vice versa?
I'd like to give it a try. I want to see what it's like.
I think that is going to be how I end up playing the game, because I think it's going to end up being a co-op game I play through. It maybe not, because if I'm doing... I can see that going downhill fast.
For you, yes, I can.
Yeah, real bad, real fast. I don't know. This is the first Star Fox game we've had since when? The last one was on DS. Was it Command?
Command. The last console one was Assault. I enjoyed Assault, no matter if other people...
Was that on GameCube?
There were 2 for GameCube, Adventures and Assault. Adventures was the weird rebranded adventure game, and Assault was the Star Fox game where you flew around, but you could get out of your R-Wing in certain levels and attack on foot with weapons. It was fun. It was an interesting take. It wasn't the same game.
I didn't play either of those because I've never been an enormous Star Fox fan. Even though Star Fox is a Nintendo exclusive, I've never felt like it was their core. Their core was always Mario and Zelda, and people said Metroid for a while, but at this point the last Metroid game we got was in 2008 or 2009.
9.
Is that when Other M came out?
9 or 10.
And people did not like Other M.
I enjoyed it.
I thought it got a bad rap, and this is coming from a guy who's played a lot of Metroid. So I don't... people they didn't want something new, and it can be debated how new it was.
And I think that's a problem Nintendo keeps having. People, I mean, my personal opinion here, people rely too heavily on nostalgia for stuff. They want new, but they don't want new. And at what point is anything good enough then? I mean, I think that's what Nintendo keeps running into. You can't rehash. I mean, what point are you satiating nostalgia by just throwing out the same game over and over again?
A lot of people accuse the Mario games of relying too heavily on nostalgia. So we're going to go with the specific examples. New Super Mario Bros. U, the new Super Mario Bros. Game in general.
Those are having... And there, it goes to that, because those all sold well.
Yeah, that was my next point. It was going to be I would consider myself a hardcore Nintendo fan. Not to say I'm a fanboy, because I drink heavily from all the pools, all the goblets. But it was pandering, is what it was. This 20-year later version of the game you played on Nintendo, they added some new power-ups, and people like myself go, this is kind of. I'll play it, I'll buy it, I'll probably enjoy it, depending on the level design, because some of those games that draw heavily on the tropes of yesteryear are still amazing. But it doesn't change the fact it's still basically the game you played 20 years ago. But then they end up selling tremendously. Super Mario Galaxy was an amazing game, but New Super Mario... was it New Super Mario Brothers? Was that the one on the Wii?
Yeah. New Super Mario Brothers. Were there two on the... No, there was just one on the Wii.
There were two on the DS.
Yes. And then there was New Super Mario Brothers U.
New Super Mario Brothers U on the Wii U. And there was New Super Mario Land. Was that New Super Mario Land?
There was Land and World. Land was for the 3DS and World was for the U.
Yeah.
And those, they hearken to nostalgia, but they...
The 3D one?
The 3D one. But they were still way more innovative than I would say the New Super Mario Brothers games were.
I mean, I would say they hearken to nostalgia only in regards to the fact they used familiar iconography. Because New Super Mario World, in particular, that had so much new, bizarre stuff.
I enjoyed that
It was great. I loved it. There's a reason it got critically darling reviews, because it was amazing and did a lot of really interesting stuff. Even if I kind of hated the multiplayer, because all you people are terrible at playing Mario games, it drives me up the wall. If I didn't have Kraus, I would seriously kill myself.
And
oh my god.
I still beat that game by myself. That last boss sucks.
That last boss was awesome. That last boss, that was amazing.
It was good, but I still hated it.
I mean, compare it with the New Super Mario Brothers they had on the Wii, where the final boss was just a giant Bowser chasing. Yeah. It was imposing and intimidating, but it wasn't anything new. Where the Bowser who was chasing you up the tower... Not only was...
In the cats.
That was the thing. He was utilizing the new power-up, which that was in itself, you're like, oh my god, he's actually using the power-up and turned into Meowser. I stole that joke. I'm not going to pretend I didn't steal it. Credit to Game Grumps, I think, on that one. It's an amazing name, Meowser. But then, when you go halfway up and you defeat him, I think, then he pulls out the double cherry. And, oh my god, suddenly there's a whole bunch of them to deal with. That was crazy. When you're on top of the tower, we should have put a spoiler alert at the front of this. Sorry, anybody who hasn't played this, 4-year-old game at this point?
4-year-old Mario game with its hardcore Mario story.
Yeah, I know. Going real deep. When you're at the top of the tower and the 4 Bowsers are coming up every side, that was intense. Like, that was amazingly executed, and a little bit of the punch was taken out for me because I was playing it cooperatively with 3 other people, one of which was Aaron, who couldn't play a platformer if you put a gun to his head.
Yeah, I'm really curious because I played the entire final world with other people, and then I had to play the last thing by myself. Beat the game.
Because of how terrible everybody else was?
No, they left.
Okay.
I wanted to beat the game, and they all left, so...
So, I bet it wasn't that bad for you, was it?
I mean, there are times where you wish there was someone else there so that when you accidentally died, they were still going, and you didn't have to start all the way back.
Well, that was a problem I honestly had with any of those cooperative Mario games, was I hate how you all draw from the same life pool. Because...
There's a plus side and there's a negative side to it, because you draw from the same life pool, kills you, but there's also if they live, you die, you can still come back, and you haven't gone all the way back to a checkpoint or something else like that.
I mean, yeah, pros and cons, but you guys die so much. You might be better now. Last time I played with you, you rode the bubble the whole way through the level, and it made me just hate you.
But it's hard because I really wanted the Wii U to have a successor to Galaxy, and just like there won't be a pure Zelda game on the Wii U, there's not really a Mario successor to Galaxy on it.
To Galaxy, no. Mario did have very strong showings on the 3DS and the Wii U with Super Mario World and New Super Mario World and New Super Mario Land. Those were incredibly strong showings. But you are correct. There was no true spiritual successor to Super Mario Galaxy which I thought was really strong. Even if the first one was super easy and the second one was just kind of a challenge version of the first one, I liked it.
I mean, I didn't play the second one. I played the first one twice because I played it with Luigi the second time. Spoiler.
Yeah, you can play a Mario game with Luigi. Oh my god.
But I really enjoyed it. I mean, staple-wise, yeah, Mario had a good showing on the Wii U. One of the things I heard a complaint-wise was if the Wii U lacked anything, it was a right out the door good.
It wasn't It wasn't even a right out the door. It was over a year. As a guy who they had Mario.
Yeah.
That was it.
Mario World was World was probably the only thing we had.
But World wasn't out the gate.
It wasn't, was it?
No, it wasn't. It took over a year. Now, New Super Mario U was out the gate.
Okay, yeah.
But that was
Nintendo Land, but it was they came with certain versions. So you're hoping the launch titles for the NX are good?
I'm hoping they make it punchy.
Zelda.
Yeah. Zelda, there's speculation there's going to be a complete version of Smash Brothers.
I'd be shocked if that was a... If I had to speculate on launch titles, Zelda, yeah, because they've pushed it back. A Mario game feels like that's something they're lacking.
They had on the Wii. What was the first Mario game on the Wii? Okay, yeah, it wasn't. There wasn't a real Mario game on the Wii for a minute, was there? Because wasn't Galaxy the first one?
Galaxy was but they launched with Twilight Princess.
They did launch with Twilight Princess, but I can't remember. Was that a GameCube game that got pushed to the Wii, or did they retro it onto the GameCube?
I don't know. I think they retroed it. Because that's the weird thing. Because I'm curious if they're going to do that. Because the GameCube was backwards.
Oh, the maps were flipped.
Yeah, the whole thing. Well, even him. He wasn't his standard.
Right. They had to flip it because of, I don't know. We're coming near the end of the time we have here, so let's go ahead and run down. What do you expect the NX to... When do you expect it to come? Well, we know when it's coming out. March of next year. What do you expect it to have?
Based on examining a lot of rumors and just some things, I expect it to be a console portable hybrid. I expect the controller to be the handheld. So I expect it to have a screen in it. I'm going to bank on cartridges right now.
Okay, so cartridges. Do you think that it will have any... Do you think it will completely abandon the optical drive?
I'm favoring the yes.
Okay. And what do you think it's going to have for a launch? Let's say launch title you're certain of, launch title you're hoping, and launch title that long shot.
Certain Zelda. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. More than likely, it's the launch title. Hoping a Mario game. Really hoping. I would like a Mario Kart game, but I don't think it's been long enough. Maybe.
Okay. I personally think that it's going to come out March. That's already been confirmed. I think that they're going to have an optical drive just because I don't think they're going to abandon the Wii U games. I think there's going to be backward compatibility. That seemed like a weird thing to me. I also think that it will still have the ROM chips, but I think it'll focus on the cartridge for new stuff and have the backward compatibility emulation. I also think that, like you said, it'll be a handheld. I'm curious how big it'll be because of that, because it has to have portability, but still big enough to be played at home. I still think it'll have NFC functionality. I think it'll be able to pair in some capacity with smart devices. Personally, I think when it launches, it will have Zelda for certain. I also think it will have Smash. I do. Because I think that's a big base, and if it comes out as a complete edition with all the DLC, I think that's a big, easy way to jump in.
Oh, you're meaning Smash from the Wii.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you meant a brand new Smash.
No. I think they're going to have the Smash Complete Edition. And Mario Kart, given the showing of Mario Kart 8, that would be a great thing for them to bring out early. Mario Kart 8, or to throw a wrench in things, a Mario Maker 2. I think that
Mario Maker did really well for
Mario Maker 2, or if they had some way to follow up on Splatoon. But Mario Maker, I think these are all great ideas, and I hope that we get the chance to see any of these. Well, we are at our time for today. So, Brent, thanks for coming on.
Yep.
And this is Josh. We will see you next time on Co-Opinions.